Thank you so much, and thanks to everybody for attending today's webcast. It's really exciting to see people from pretty much all over the world attending today's webcast. That's very exciting. So as Jasmina mentioned, I'm Jaime Velez. I'm actually the CEO and founder of WebForce One. And before I start the presentation, I first wanted to put in a quick disclaimer here. This is something that our attorneys make us do. So just want to make sure that everybody understands that Microsoft Office 365 is a separate product. It's hosted by Microsoft. Office 365 is a registered trademark of the Microsoft Corporation. And the views on this webcast are my views, are the views of WebForce One, and not necessarily the views of Microsoft or the O'Reilly Media Company. So now that we got the legal stuff out of the way, just wanted to quickly just give you a quick background on myself and what WebForce One does. So I started this company recently. I'm the CEO and founder. I got over 20 years of experience with business and IT consulting. I'm also a technical reviewer for O'Reilly Books. Some of the SharePoint books that are currently being written, I'm doing some of the technical reviews for accuracy to make sure that the technical information is correct. I'm a former Microsoft employee. I spent the last 5 years working at Microsoft in different roles. Most recently, I was a SharePoint solution architect. And for those on the call that don't know what SharePoint is, I'll be talking about SharePoint quite a bit during this presentation. It's part of Office 365, so if you're not familiar with it, you'll be familiar by the end of this presentation. I'm also an active SharePoint and Office 365 community member. You'll see me posting frequently on Twitter. I also speak regularly at SharePoint Saturday events. And if you're not familiar with those events, you can find out more about those at sharepointsaturday.org. And if by any chance, if you happen to be in the Ohio area, I am going to be speaking this Saturday at the SharePoint Saturday in Columbus. The main thing that I really want everybody to take away from my background is I'm really, really passionate about solving real business problems through technology. But not just solving them, but being innovative about them. And that's what kind of attracted me to Office 365. That's what I've been doing at Microsoft for the last 5 years, and as a consultant for the last 20 years. So the reason why I decided to title this webcast the Office 365 Small Business Revolution is because small businesses now have at their disposal technologies that they couldn't afford or they weren't easily accessible before to them. Now that I got my background, that's enough about me. Let's go ahead and talk about the agenda for today. So let me go ahead and advance to the next slide. So a few topics I'd like to cover today during our presentation is, first of all, what is Office 365? So a lot of people probably on this call wondering what's Office 365, or they might have some idea or some misconceptions about it. So hopefully by the end of this webcast, I'll be able to clarify those questions for you. I also want to discuss why I consider this to be power tools for small business. So on another disclaimer, power tools is not a term that Microsoft is using. It's something that we use at WebForce One to describe what small businesses can do with Office 365. So I'll be giving you a few examples of some of the functionality and some of the capabilities that are found within Office 365. Then after that, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the different plans that are available. Office 365 comes in different flavors. There's different versions of the product for different needs. So I'll spend a little bit on the plans, and hopefully I'll be able to clarify some questions you have as well regarding which plan is the right plan for you. Then I'd like to talk about some new scenarios that were not available before for SMB. So as I mentioned earlier, small and mid-sized businesses are going to be able to do things that we're not able to do before. Because of the service, the availability of the service, and also the affordability of the service. Then I want to talk about the future of small business productivity. What does Office 365 really mean for small businesses, and how is it going to change the way they work in the future? Then lastly, I want to talk about how you can join the revolution. If you haven't tried it yet, I'm going to give you some tips and some guidance on how you can onboard to Office 365. And I'm also going to share some sample testimonials, some case studies of small and mid-sized businesses that are currently using Office 365 today. Then lastly, what I'd like to do is to just open it up for questions. I'm going to do Q&A at the end of the call. I'm going to try to limit the slides to about 40 to 50 minutes. I believe the webcast is about 70 minutes long today. So what I'd like to do is give you guys at least about 15, 20 minutes towards the end of the call to answer any specific questions you may have on Office 365. Okay, so let's get started. So what is Office 365? So Office 365 is basically Microsoft's communication and collaboration products, like Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Lync Online. In addition to that, it's also Microsoft Office Professional, all bundled up as a service, as a hosted solution that's provided by Microsoft, but is sold directly through Microsoft or through partners. So you can go through either Microsoft Direct, or you can work with your Microsoft partners to get access to Office 365. It's a brand new way of delivering the service. What it means to small businesses is that you no longer have to invest in hardware. You can just sign up as a hosted solution, and you immediately have access to those 4 components of Office 365. So what I like to do next is, I don't want to, my goal is not to describe every single functionality and all the entire feature set of each product, but what I like to do is I like to give you a highlight of what you can find in each of the products. So if we start with Microsoft Office, this is Office Professional Plus. So with Office 365, you can actually download the entire suite. You can download Office Professional Plus, which includes things like Word, Excel, PowerPoint. It also includes SharePoint Workspace, which is a new it's a new client product I'm going to describe a little bit later during the presentation. It allows you to take some of your content from SharePoint offline, but it's the same Office, the same Office applications
Jamie?
that. Yes.
Excuse me, this is Yasmina, your host. Sorry to interrupt. We're getting reports from attendees that there is a buzzing sound you're speaking. So I don't know if there's something close by that could be causing some interference. If you could check that and move it, that would be great. Back to you.
Sure. Okay, great. Apologize about that. Let me see if let me move my phone around. Maybe it was interfering with something else. Okay, so as I was saying, the first component of Office 365 is Office Professional Plus. 1 second, let me see if I can get rid of the buzzing sound. I'm getting Jasmina, can you still hear the buzzing sound?
Right now, no. So hopefully that has been resolved. Thank you.
Okay. So it's going to be a little challenging because I actually had to push away from my desk about 2 or 3 feet, but I'll do my best. Okay, so let's get back to what is Office 365. So it's basically Office Professional Plus, Exchange, SharePoint, and Lync. And I'm going to give you just a few highlights for each of the components. So with Office Professional Plus, it's the same rich client that you would purchase off the shelf. The difference is that you can actually download it through your subscription, and it's a pay-as-you-go licensing model. So you don't have to actually pay for the entire software up front. You just pay as you go, and you pay on a monthly fee as you need it. With Exchange Online, you get a 25-gig mailbox. You can access your Exchange emails through Outlook, or you can access it through the Outlook web app interface. You get antivirus, anti-spam filters. It's the same exact Outlook Exchange that you're familiar with, but you get it hosted through Exchange Online. So you also can access it through a multitude of mobile devices. You can access Exchange through your BlackBerry, through your iPhones, through Android. You also get a really nice experience on your Windows phone. If anybody on the call has a Windows phone, you'll notice that aside from Exchange, you can also have a new feature called the Office Hub, and the Office Hub allows you to connect to SharePoint Online, which is the next component I'd like to talk about a little bit. Later in the presentation, I'm going to present some new scenarios that small businesses can take advantage of with SharePoint Online. SharePoint is not something that small businesses traditionally know or use. Very few have it right now. SharePoint is very, very popular in the enterprise. It's been around for about 10 years, and it's a multi-purpose tool. It really is. It does a lot of things. It does document management. It gives you collaboration, team sites. It also gives you project sites. In this new version of SharePoint, we also have on SharePoint Online, we also have My Site. So now you can have your own personalized SharePoint sites where you can share your own documents with other team members. In addition to document management, you can also do search with SharePoint Online, which is a great feature. You can pretty much upload all your documents and have it, instead of having to open each document to find something in it, you can actually just do a complete search across all your documents in your SharePoint environment. SharePoint Online also introduces business process management via workflows. This is something that in the past you could do through third-party workflow software, but now small businesses have access to it via SharePoint. And it's much, much more than this. Later in the presentation, I am going to give you some examples of some business applications that you can develop using SharePoint, some real simple applications that really doesn't require a developer to implement. But I'll touch on that a little later during the presentation. So the fourth component is a new product. It's called Link. It's Link Online. So if you're familiar with Office Live Meeting, which is a product that we had before, and also OCS, Office Communication Server, that was a server that allowed you to do instant messaging inside your corporation. So what Microsoft did is they took the Live Meeting product and the OCS product and combined it into one, which is now Link. So Link is also available on-premise. It doesn't have to be just online. But the Link Online component of Office 365 allows you to do things like instant messaging, audio and video calls between all your coworkers or all your subscribers of Office 365. The one thing that's not available right now, but it will be available in the future, will be voice. So right now you can do voice calls as long as you're calling another Office 365 subscriber. So Link also gives you online meetings, allows you to share your desktop, so you can do you can do real-time sharing with some of your coworkers. You can click to communicate from any Office contact cards, and contact cards is something that you'll see throughout SharePoint. You see it on Exchange Online, and you can see presence, so you can see whether a person is available or not, and you can click to communicate with them instantly. Okay, so the nice thing about the Office 365 platform is that all these solutions are provided as a single platform, and you have a single interface. So and you can also assign different roles to the different employees. So some employees can manage, for instance, SharePoint, but not Exchange, and you can have other employees manage Exchange and not SharePoint. So there's a role-based access as well. Identity Federation is something that's new in Office 365. And basically, this is for the mid-sized to larger customers that want to integrate their Active Directory services with Office 365. And without getting too technical, what I mean by that is you can have a single sign-on experience. So instead of having to manage two separate sets of credentials, having your own separate password in Office 365 and your own separate password for your network PCs, you can use the same AD account to log into both systems. And there's different scenarios for that. If anybody has any specific questions, I'll be glad to answer those separately. I don't want to get too technical because I want to really focus this on for the small business audience. And then finally, it's a complete system integration. So like I said before, you have a single user interface that allows you to manage everything. In the past, if you wanted to manage Exchange on-premise and SharePoint on-premise, you had to have different interface, different consoles, which meant that you needed to have different skill sets to manage those systems. But if you learn how to manage Office 365, you can manage all your systems from one interface. Okay, moving to the next slide. What I'd like to do now is explain why I consider Office 365 to be power tools for small business. And the reason why I call it power tools is because small business never had these capabilities before. So if we start with the best productivity experience, and what you'll see here is now with the Office 365, one scenario is users will be able to access their Word documents through Office Web Apps. Office Web Apps is a new functionality that allows you to open, edit, and manage your documents through your browser. And the benefit of this is there could be a time when you don't have access to your PC, you have somebody else's PC or another system that doesn't have Office installed. You can still open your Word document through the browser. Another scenario that Office Web Apps introduces is this concept of co-authoring. And co-authoring is basically the ability for multiple users to work together on the same document. So it's kind of small, but if you look at the image here, you can see that there's one user working on the second paragraph, and there's another user working on the third paragraph, and this is happening in real time. If you don't agree with what one person is saying, you can instantly click to communicate with them. So these buttons are here, the Office contacts. You can click on it, and you can start an instant message communication with them in real time. This is a new scenario that you've never seen before for small businesses. which is available now through Office Web Apps. Okay. Another scenario is Link. So here you can see a screenshot of Link. You can see that these two gentlemen are having a video-to-video audio conversation. They're sharing their screen here. Link also gives you the ability to record your session. So if you wanted to do a small webcast, or if you wanted to record the session to review later, you can do that as well. It has a whiteboard, so you can actually compare notes. You can actually scribble or brainstorm real time. And, of course, it's instant messaging. So this is what the Link interface looks like. It's a very rich client. It allows you to do a multitude of things. It's not just for communication, but you can collaborate with your screen, and you can take over. You can also give control of your screen to somebody else. So it's a great tool also for remote collaboration. Okay, the next item here, this is an example of a My Site. And a My Site is basically a SharePoint site that allows you to organize all of your documents in a single place. It also has different web parts. For example, it has something called My Organization Chart, and this is tied into your Active Directory system. So this works if you have it connected through the Identity Federation. So basically, it pulls all your information from your Active Directory server, and it actually tells you who your manager. It shows who your colleagues are. And it's just a nice way to browse through the organization. This is a useful feature for bigger companies that just want to quickly find out who other people in their departments are. Okay, so this is in My Site. And moving on, the next thing I want to show here is that actually this is your calendar through Outlook. You can see that you can share calendars with your colleagues. This is done through Exchange Online. So you can email, you can share, you can also publish online your calendar. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you here, this is a SharePoint site. And this is where you can do some of your document management capabilities. This is where you can upload documents. You can also control the versions of the document. You can turn on versioning so you can see what changes have been made to a document. And you can keep task lists, you can keep schedules, and you can pretty much stay in sync with all your teammates. One thing I wanted to mention here is as I mentioned earlier, Office 365 has cross-browser support. It works not just on Internet Explorer, but in this example, you can see that this is being displayed through Firefox. And it also works on Safari, so if you want to use it on your Macs and your iPads, it works as well on that platform. Another thing that I want to point out here, as I mentioned earlier, the whole system has this familiar Office experience, this Office interface. So if you're used to working with Office 2007 and Office 2010 and you're familiar with this concept of the ribbon, you'll notice that SharePoint also has a ribbon in its interface. And a ribbon is basically a way to give you contextual options. So depending on what section of the website you're currently connected to, clicking on, the ribbon would change and would give you different options that are pertaining to the section that you're working in. Okay, one second while I advance here to the next slide. So far where I talked about the best productivity experience that you can receive through Office 365, but one of the biggest values for small businesses is that you can access your information from anywhere. And what I'd like to show next is, I apologize for the slides are progressing a little slowly here. But what I'd like to, okay, I'm waiting for the slides to show up on your end. Okay, great. So what I'd like to show next is the rich client access through Office Desktop. So here you see that we're using Outlook Web App. Again, this is supported through IE, Firefox, or Safari. So the idea that a small business can access their email through their phones, through any browser, through any device, it's really what gives you the best value for be able to access your information from anywhere. So you have a single inbox to manage all your emails. You can connect securely through HTTPS, so you can rest assured that your email communications are secure. Okay, on the next slide here, I'm going to demonstrate what it looks like. I'm going to wait a minute for the slide to refresh. I notice it's taking a little longer. Okay, on the next slide, what I'd like to show you is the Windows Phone interface. So with Windows phones, you can, as I mentioned earlier, you can access SharePoint directly, and you can have access to your document libraries. There's also this new notion of the Office Hub, which is a new feature of the Windows Phone 7. And the Office Hub allows you to connect to your documents that you have stored online on Office 365. Okay, I'm just going to show you now some other screenshots of what the interface looks like for Windows Phone 7. I'm going to wait a few seconds. Okay, there it is. So this is your Outlook schedule. This is so you can see your schedule through your phone. Okay, so far I talked about the first two pillars here, and what I'd like to talk about now, it's we already touched on this. So it's Office 365. It gives you the familiarity of Office products. So everything, you don't really have to relearn a lot of new interface. If you've been working with Office for a while, you can pretty much navigate through Office 365. Okay, I'm going to advance through some of the slides here. And I want to touch a little bit now on reliability. So one of the biggest benefits of Office 365 is that Microsoft gives you 99.9% an SLA. So what that pretty much means is they guarantee the system to be up 99.9% of the time. And if the system fails beyond that, Microsoft actually pays you. They reimburse you for the service for any outages that you encounter. So for the first time, small businesses have enterprise-level security and reliability, and this is not without having to rely on their own IT support staff. So when you sign up for the service, you pretty much have access to the world's largest IT department that's looking over your systems. Okay, so the last thing I want to touch on here is the IT control and efficiency. So you don't need to have an IT support staff to manage all this for you. Microsoft takes care of all their hardware. They take care of all the redundancy. They make sure that everything, they take care of the uptime. And all you had to do is have one person that's familiar enough with the administrative console, or you can have your partner manager for you, and you can manage everything from a single interface. So it's efficient. You don't have to worry about having to hire systems administrators, network administrators. It's all done for you. Okay. So what I wanted to show here is basically how small businesses have access to what I call power tools. What I'd like to do now is talk about the different plans that are available with Office 365. Office 365 comes in 3 different flavors. It comes for the first package that's available is Office 365 for small business and professionals, and it's what Microsoft refers to as the P plan. The other packages that are available are Office 365 for Enterprise. And in a few minutes, I'm going to give you a little more detail on that, but that's those packages for any size organization. They're not necessarily for enterprises. There's also scenarios where a small business may want to go to an Office 365 E plan. And the third solution that's not available yet, but it will be available soon, is the Office 365 for Education. And if you go to the Microsoft site today and you look up Office 365 for Education, what they're actually recommending, if you're interested in this plan, is to try out the E3 plan, which I'll describe in a minute. But the E3 plan is going to be the closest, it's going to be the most comparable service to the Office 365 for Education. So the small business plan, it's intended for organizations with 50 or less users. It's intended for organizations that have no IT support or very limited IT support. It provides a very low subscription fee. It has a very, very simple interface. And there's no 24/7 support available for small businesses. There is, but it's via a community website, and it's done through a ticketing system online. So you can actually submit a service request, and you'll receive a response typically within a half a day or a few hours. By the next day, you'll immediately receive it. You're almost guaranteed to receive a response from support. But what I found out is for the small businesses, the community help, it's very, very helpful. It's a very vibrant community. Everybody's there to help and assist each other. The way you can access that is by going to community.office365.com. and that's where you can actually post some of your questions or just get feedback from other Office 365 users. The Office 365 for Enterprise has some more features. If this is going to be managed by your own IT staff, with Enterprise you have the ability to script certain tasks, and this is done through something called PowerShell, which is a Microsoft scripting language. And like, as I mentioned earlier, it provides you 24/7 support. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Office 365 P plan, which is the most common plan that for professionals and small businesses. So this is a very simple plan. It gives you access to Outlook. It gives you access to a SharePoint team site. And if you notice, I put in parentheses here, there's a single site collection. So you'll have a team site, but you don't have the ability to create multiple site collections. You'll be able to share documents with your team, but it's all within a single site collection. And if you wonder what a site collection is basically a security boundary in SharePoint. So every site collection has its own permissions. So everything that you share in your SharePoint team site, it's going to be accessible to everybody through a single set of permissions. With the enterprise systems, you can actually have multiple site collections, and I'll explain that in a minute here. With the P plan, you still have access to link online, so you'll be able to do conferencing from PC to PC. And that's video and audio only, so you can't do a voice from PC to a voice line. And the plan is only $6 per month. This is US dollars for the P plan. The plan is not there's no limit. So if you want to sign up for just one user, you can just sign up one user. But there's no minimum number of users that you need to sign up to use the P plan. This is what the interface looks like. So when you first log into the administrative console, you'll see that you have access to your inbox, your calendar. You can have options. You can set up some options here. The link is not a web client, but here's a link where you can actually download the link client, and you can start using it for conferencing. So on your team side, you have web apps. You have Office web apps, so you can create Excel, Word, PowerPoint, OneNote documents through your site. And you can share those documents with other team members. Oh, and another thing that's available through the P plan is you can actually create a public-facing website. So this is a great solution for small businesses that just want a simple public-facing website. And this is done through SharePoint Online. And if you notice, our actual website, webforce1.net, is hosted through Office 365. So if you'd like to see what that looks like, you can head over to our website, and that's all done in Office 365. Okay, I apologize. I realized I didn't advance the slide. So what I wanted to show you is the interface. It should be coming up here shortly. Okay, so that's the administrative portal interface for the P plan. Okay. So there are some instances where the P plan might not be enough for a small business. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about there's 5 different factors that might encourage a small business to go with the enterprise plan. And the first one is if you need to have that synchronization between your Active Directory and your Office 365 logins. So if you don't want to manage 2 sets of credentials, the best thing to do is to sign up for an E-plan. And then through the help of Microsoft or through the help of your partners, we can set up this directory synchronization tool that basically will send your user logins and passwords to the Office 365 cloud, and then you can manage it all through one location. The second scenario, when P plan might not be enough for the small business, it's if you have some complex email and legal compliance requirements. In that case, we encourage you to go to the enterprise plan. Another factor is if you need BlackBerry support. So BlackBerry support is currently only offered to the enterprise plans. You can still get, if you do the P plan, you can still get access to your emails, but it would not be through your BlackBerry. You can do it with web access, Outlook web access, or you can do it through the Outlook client. And as I mentioned earlier too, if your organization, even if you're not greater than 50 users right now, but if you plan to grow more than 50 users, it would probably be best to go with the enterprise plans as well. And the other factor that would determine whether you go to a P plan or an E plan. It's if you need 24/7 support. If your business is the type of business that needs support immediately, then you probably want to sign up for the E plan, and you'll have access to a Microsoft Engineer, Support Engineer 24/7. Okay. So now I want to touch on the different plans, on the other plans. So I'm going to start talking now about the K plan, and which is K is for kiosk, and I'll explain in a minute what a kiosk worker is, and E is for the enterprise plans. So with Office 365, the K plan, it's actually it's a very, very great way to give access to some of your employees that are always on the road or they're not necessarily sitting in front of a computer all day. And this could, some examples of this could be nurses are moving from nurse station to nurse stations, or it could be a front desk hotel reception, and you have receptionists that are switched from terminal to terminal. So if you want to give them limited access to email, you can do it through the K plan. They can sign up only to Outlook Web Access. So all they have to do is go to the browser, type in their credentials, and they have limited access to email. Also, the SharePoint Online Kiosk plan allows your users to have read-only access to SharePoint. So if you want certain employees to only be able to read documents or download documents, then you can also sign them up for the K1 plan, which is only $4 a month per user. In addition to that, if you want those same users to have access to web apps, you can increase the K plan for another $6. You can also give them access to Office web apps. So there's two options for the kiosk workers. There's the K1 for $4 a month, and there's the K2 for $10 a month. Okay, now we move on to the bigger plans, the enterprise plans. And if you notice the first plan, the E1 plan, is very similar to the P1 plan, but it gives you some additional functionality. The archiving that I mentioned earlier, the collaboration portal, so SharePoint Online gives you additional features, and you can also have additional site collections, so you can create more than one SharePoint team site for your company. So if you move on to the E2 plan, the E2 plan gives you that plus Office web apps. The E3 plan, it gives you these are mainly the two blue boxes that you see on the E3 plan. Those are mainly SharePoint Online features. So with SharePoint Online, you now can create forms, and these are web-based forms that are created through Office through InfoPath. You also have access to some new services are introduced with SharePoint Online. Access Services is a new function of SharePoint where you can actually publish your Access databases to SharePoint, and you can access them through the SharePoint site. Visio Services is actually another new functionality of SharePoint, and what that does is allows you to create Visio-based workflows that you can then publish to SharePoint, and you can manage those workflows online. So with the E3 plan, you get all that, and you get Office Professional Plus, and this is what gives you the full access to the entire suite of Office products, which I mentioned earlier. For E3 is for $24 a month. So if you don't have the E3 plan, you can still use Office if you have it installed locally. If you already had a license that you purchased previously, you can still use it. But if this is a great plan for new users that don't have access to Office today, and this way you can only pay for as you need for the licenses. And then finally, the last plan is the E4 plan, which includes voice, and that's going to be $27 per month per user. Okay, I'm going to advance to the next slide here. And I'm going to wait a second. I noticed that there's a delay on the slide. So the next thing I want to do is I want to start talking about the new scenarios that are available to small businesses. So what I want to do here is I want to paint a picture. I want to introduce you to a fictitious company. This is Joe G. Joe G owns a small insurance agency, and he currently has 10 full-time employees. So Joe has some business needs that he needs to address. And basically what Joe needs, he needs to have a corporate image for his clients. He doesn't want to use Yahoo or Hotmail or Gmail to communicate with his client. He wants email that has his corporate domain name in the email system. He wants a reliable email system, so he doesn't want to receive spam. He doesn't want to receive any junk email. He wants to do an online document management system so he can enter all his customers' documentation online. He can access that anywhere. Joe travels a lot, so it's important for him to be able to access his documents from any system. And then lastly, Joe wants to be able to communicate remotely with his workers, not just through the telephone, but he wants to be able to do instant communication, and he wants to be able to collaborate real time and do screen sharing with some of his employees. So what Joe does is Joe contacts his local IT consultant. He tells the consultant what he needs. And the consultant pretty much comes back to Joe with some proposals. And what he's recommending is that he implements an Exchange server, a SharePoint server, and a link server. And these are rough numbers, but anyone that does any small business IT consulting can probably validate this. So to set up an Exchange server that's reliable, that's got redundancy, and and these numbers are not just hardware, but these are hardware, consultant, deployment, and setup services. Roughly, it's going to cost Joe about $7,000 to deploy an Exchange server on-premise. For SharePoint, it's going to cost him a little more. So he finds out that he can have SharePoint, but he doesn't want to install it in just one server. He wants to have a system that's reliable. So it's going to cost him about $15,000 to deploy a SharePoint server. That's going to allow him to do what he needs to do for his document management and his collaboration sites. Link is going to cost Joe approximately $8,000. So the picture I'm trying to paint here is that to implement those type of services before Office 365 existed, it was going to cost Joe approximately $30,000 to implement Exchange, SharePoint, and Link servers for his company. And then on top of that, once the system is set up and deployed, Joe needs somebody to maintain that system and keep it up and running and make sure that all the updates are applied, all the patches are applied. So a good network or system admin is going to cost Joe approximately $60,000 to $100,000 per year. So if you look at the total investment for the first year alone, Joe's going to have to pay almost $130,000. So what does Joe do? Joe calls his local Microsoft Online Services partner. He tells him what he needs, and then he gets a quote from WebForce One. And then he finds out he can get a system through Office 365 that would meet all his needs that would only cost him $6 per user per month. So Joe's like, wow, that's incredible. So what you can see here is for $6 per user per month, which is the equivalent to $720 per year, Joe has access to what normally would have cost him almost over $100,000 per year to receive the system. So the point that I'm trying to present here is there are definitely some new scenarios that small businesses will be able to take advantage of that they never had access to before. So now Joe has access to the world's largest IT department, taking care of his business for only $6 per user per month. It's a no-brainer, and that also probably explains why Joe is so happy in this picture here. You can see he's got a big smile on his face there. So another scenario that I'd like to present to you. So what I present to you was a basic need for a basic small business customer. With Office 365, as I mentioned earlier, you have access to SharePoint Online. And SharePoint Online just pretty much opens the door to a multitude of possibilities of different applications that you can build for your small business. And SharePoint Online introduces this notion of no-code solutions. And what I mean by no-code solutions, these are solutions that don't require a developer to be built. This could be built using the out-of-the-box functionality of SharePoint. Or this could also be built using SharePoint Designer, which is it's a free product that you can download and allows you to create workflows. It allows you to create custom web parts. Web parts are plugins that you can put into your SharePoint Online site. And what you can see here is this is some scenarios. This is some of the possible scenarios that you can build with SharePoint. So everything that you see in the top, this is not out of the box with SharePoint, but these are sample solutions that could be built on top of SharePoint Online deployed through Office 365. What you see on the bottom is all the feature set that comes with SharePoint, and basically those are all building blocks that allow you to build business solutions on top of SharePoint. So I'm not going to discuss this any further. I do want to mention that I am doing a webcast in September on Office 365 and SharePoint Online. And during that webcast, I'm going to go into a little more detail on how you can build solutions on SharePoint. So here's the information. If you haven't signed up for it already, you can sign up through O'Reilly.com/webcast. And this will be the second in the series of Office 365 webcasts that I'm going to be performing for O'Reilly. So let me go ahead and move forward. I notice we're at 42 minutes. I want to make sure I leave enough time for questions at the end of the presentation. So hopefully I've been able to show to you what the future of small business productivity looks like. So small businesses through Office 365 now have access to these power tools that were only available before to large companies. But not only is it available to them, it's available to them at small business prices. So let me go ahead and move forward. So how can you join the revolution? How can you start taking advantage? If you're a small business, first thing I'd like to encourage you is don't just take my word for it. Do your homework. Find out why other people, not just Webforce One, are saying that Office 365 is the greatest thing that's ever happened to small business IT. But there's a great article that I saw recently from PC World that basically talks about how Office 365 virtually pays for itself. I've included a short URL here so you can access the article and read it yourself. But also, I'd like you to really check out this. There's a series of video case studies that Microsoft recently put together where they show some real-life customers and what they've done with Office 365. And there's about 25 videos, and it's a series of companies that are being featured there. Some of the companies include Bees Insurance Agency, CNI Engineering, Boys and Girls Club of Bellevue. And these are real companies that implemented real solutions on top of Office 365. So I strongly encourage you to check those out. So, and then the last thing I want to mention is that in Office 365 is not just for big customers anymore. It's also for SMBs too. And what I've hoped that I have accomplished in this presentation is to show you how Office 365 gives you the tools that a big business would have, but at a small business price. So what I like to do next, I also want to share some other resources that are available. Best place to find out more about Office 365 is directly to the Microsoft website at office365.com. And I also wanted to share some of my favorite blogs on Office 365. So the first one is office365answers.com. And I'd like to mention that our company is not affiliated with any of those blogs. Office 365 Answers is a blog that's run by Brett Hill. Brett Hill is actually one of the first Office 365 MVPs, probably one of the most knowledgeable people in the space right now in Office 365. And he's got some really great content out there where he actually answers some of the most difficult technical questions on Office 365. Office 365 Rocks is another one of my favorite blogs. This is a company in Amsterdam that's been very successful deploying Microsoft Online solutions to small businesses or businesses of all sizes. And then the community site, community.office365.com. This is where you can post any questions you want about Office 365. I believe the site's moderated by Microsoft as well. And this is where all their Office 365 experts like to hang out and answer questions for anybody. And then lastly, you can go to our website, webforce1.net, if you'd like to learn more. If you'd like to try Office 365, you can actually look for the logo, and you can start your 30-day free trial for Office 365. So that's the end of my presentation. I'd like to thank you all for listening to this. Hopefully you were able to get some good content out of this. I'd also like to remind you that if you haven't signed up already, there are some additional webcasts that I'm going to be presenting in Office 365. The next one is going to be SharePoint Online, and that's going to be September 15. Office Web Apps on October 13. Then I also have Exchange in November, and I'll be talking about Link Online December 1st. And you can sign up for those webcasts through events.o'reilly.com. If you have additional questions, I'm going to try to get to all your questions now. We have about maybe 25 minutes left, I believe. But if for some reason I don't get to your questions, you can also email me directly, jamie.velez@webforce1.net, or you can also find me on Twitter, sp_Jamie. So that's my presentation for now. I'm going to turn it back to Jasmina to see if I can start answering some questions from the audience.
Great. Thank you for that wonderful presentation, Jamie. We do have many questions that came in, so I'll take them in the order that they came in for you. Okay, it looks like L. White asks, how do you define small and mid-sized businesses?
That's a great question. And the best way I can answer that is everybody has different ways, but for Microsoft, as far as Office 365 is concerned, A small business, they consider anybody 50 users or less. I realize that the SBA probably has a different definition for small businesses. They might go by revenues. But in the context of Office 365 and in the context of the plans, it will be 50 users or less.
All right. And we have Tim Brewster asks, how is authentication handled? Integrate with internal Active Directory, or do you need to set up accounts online?
So that's another great question. And initially, you do have to create one account. That would be the administrator account. And this is where you can start configuring your services. But after that, so there's really three scenarios. So there's the scenario where you have the Microsoft Online ID, and that's not integrated with AD. Then you have to integrate with AD, you can download a tool called DIRSync, Directory Synchronization. And basically what that does is it pushes your information over to the cloud. You establish a secure connection with that one online account that you set up initially, and then you can set that on a schedule. So anytime, so daily any new users are added to your Active Directory will be pushed to the cloud. There's a new scenario that was introduced with Office 365, and that's ADFS, Active Directory Federation Services, and that's a little more complex, and that actually requires you to have an ADFS server installed on-premise. And if anybody has want to learn more about that, I can point you to some really great resources on that. But that's the ADFS scenario is really geared more for larger companies. Mid-sized companies are probably going to go more to the other route, which is to do directory synchronization.
Okay, and we've got Viet Dung asks, comparing with Google Docs, which favors are unique and more convenient with Office 365?
I'm sorry, can you repeat which? I didn't get the whole question. Which?
The question is comparing Office 365 with Google Docs. Which favors are unique and more convenient between Office 365 versus Google Docs?
I'm not exactly sure what he means by which favors. Well, I'm not really familiar with Google Docs that much, but I can talk about the development story. So with if anything that you can build on SharePoint today, if you can package it as a WSP file and deploy it, the term that we use is a sandbox solution. So if it's a customization that could be deployed to a single site collection, you can deploy that on Office 365 today. The limitation is that it only applies to one single site collection. If you need it to multiple site collections, you would have to create different deployment packages. I hope I was able to answer part of his question. So perhaps this might be one I can maybe take offline, or maybe he can send me an email directly, and I'll be happy to help further.
Viet Dungley, if you're still on the webcast with us, please email Jamie. His contact information is on the screen with more details on your question so he can answer it. Okay, Jamie, next question from Agatha. She asks, how secure and safe are files on Office 365?
So one of the slides that I mentioned earlier, let me see if I can bring it up, shows all the different compliance requirements that the data centers meet. So it's all secure. So if you're concerned about security on the files, even though the data centers themselves are completely secure, there is one limitation with the P plan. The P plan is your team site doesn't use SSL. So if you're really concerned about that, I would recommend that you use an E plan to secure your files. But there was a slide I was trying to find. I can't find it. But the data centers go to some really strict security compliance requirements. So it's probably the most secure system that you can store your information in today.
Great. Okay, Carmen asks, does P plan include Microsoft Office?
It does not. The P plan does not allow you to download. So it includes Office web apps, so meaning that you can open up Word documents, you can open up Excel documents through your browser, but it does not include the full Office client suite.
Okay, and Tim asks, if doing conferencing with a client, does the other party require a user plan?
No, that's a great question. So they do not. They can get the link attendee client, and they can communicate with you. But that's only, well, let me be careful how I answer that question. They don't get the full functionality. If they want to get full functionality like the video and PC audio, they have to have an Office 365 user account. But if you're just going to be broadcasting a presentation, they do not have to have a full link client. They would probably have to dial into a conference line through a telephone line, but they can see the presentation through the link attendee client.
Great. And again, Agatha, she asks, can an Africa-based company purchase a license, or is this something that's mainly for SMBs in North America?
So that's a great question. So Office 365 is available globally. I don't know off the top of my head if it's available in Africa, but I can definitely find out for you. I believe if you try to sign up for a trial, so if you go to like my website, webforce1.net, you click the Office 365 trial, when you sign up, there's a drop-down list of all the available countries in there. And I'll take a look, but I'm not sure if Africa is available. But it's available. It's not just for North America. It's available to customers globally. It's available in 40 markets, I believe.
Oh, thank you very much. Another question from, let's see, this one's from Joe. Joe asks, I'm assuming these plans are additive, meaning I can add 2 K1s to my P plan for a total of $6 for $4 a month?
Yes, that is correct. You can mix and match the different plans. There are some limitations. So you can't have P plans and E plans commingle. You can have them together, but you can do a K plan and add it to a P plan, and you can add a K to an E. So there are some hybrid scenarios where you can have different plan options.
Great. And let's see, we have Paul asking, what's the control panel like for the administrator of the group which uses Office 365?
So I showed an example earlier. Let me see if I can bring up that slide. And that was for the P plan. Give me 1 second. I'll try to bring it up here quickly. Let me see if I can push this. So I just took a small screenshot. That's not the entire console. It should be coming up here shortly. So it's a single web interface. When you connect, you'll see a section for Outlook. You'll see a section for Link, for TeamSide. I think it's still trying to refresh. I apologize. I can see it on my presenter console, but I don't think it's showing up immediately on your side. So it's a web interface. It's a really streamlined interface. It's nothing like what your administrative console is today for Exchange or SharePoint. It's a lot more simplified. So if the person that asked the question, if they want to email, I'll be happy to send you some sample screenshots as well.
Perfect. And let's see here. We have Russ. Russ asks, say I decide to go away from Office 365. How do I get my data back?
That's a great question. So if you're talking about your mailboxes, like your emails, you can actually migrate them. So there's different third-party tools available that will allow you to push emails. We normally prefer that you migrate from another system to Office 365, but you can use the same tools to migrate off of Office 365 to another email platform. If you're talking about SharePoint data, your SharePoint data, you can actually download it. You can see, if you're talking about document libraries, you can save your document library as a template, and there's a little checkbox that says include content, so you can take all your content with you. You may have to upload it to a SharePoint site on-premise, but then after you have it there, then you can download it and put it anywhere you like.
Okay, another question is, how tweakable are the security settings and user permissions from the Office 365 control panel?
So if you're familiar with SharePoint at all, SharePoint permissions is the same type of permissions. The only difference is you don't have farm admin levels, but anything you can do at a site collection level, you can do in SharePoint Online. So you can create your own SharePoint groups, and then within those SharePoint groups, you can actually assign different permission levels. I'm assuming that you were referring to SharePoint on that question, but there's also at the administrative panel, there's also this new notion of role-based access, where you can assign an administrator to administer certain functions. So you can have an administrator that only administers SharePoint, or you can have an administrator that only administers mailboxes. So there's different levels. There's different. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's definitely flexible, where you can set up different administrative rights for different users.
Wonderful. Looks like 2 more questions, Jamie. Lori asks, can you recommend training resources for IT personnel?
Absolutely. So Microsoft has done a really, really great job on posting a lot of information out there. There's an Office 365 end-user training kit that's available. If you want to send me an email, I can send you lots of resources. There's a lot of Microsoft resources. There's a series, there's an Office 365 for IT pros webcast video series that was published recently that gets a little more technical into deploying. If somebody wants to learn more about how the Active Directory synchronization work, that's all available. I believe you can go to technet.edge or edge.technet.com and search for Office 365, and there's a series of videos available there. One of the blogs that I posted, one of the websites I posted earlier, Office 365 Answers, has a great, lots of great resources available as well. So there's a lot of information available. The biggest challenge is going to be navigating through it, but if you can go to office365.community.com and you can post where can I find information on this, and within minutes, or even if you post it on Twitter, within minutes you'll get a response.
Fantastic. And a final question is from Subu Vis, and Subu asks, do we have the flexibility to integrate our SharePoint or Office applications with existing systems like Salesforce?
So again, if you're able to do some kind of custom solution and deploy it as what we call a sandbox solution, you might be able to integrate some. That's a tough question for me to answer without knowing exactly what it is that you're trying to integrate with Salesforce. Like, are you trying to pull customer data from Salesforce.com? It depends what you're trying to accomplish. There are some customizations options available. So SharePoint is not just a closed system where you only put data and you can't really integrate with anybody else, with any other system. So you can definitely do some integration. In addition to that, if you also have accessibility through if you can do client-side solutions, so you can do things like Silverlight applications or that can actually call out web services. So if Salesforce.com has a web service or an API available that you can access through a Silverlight interface, then you can bring that information into SharePoint Online.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic, Jaime. That's all the questions that did come in.